This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with a Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Welcome to No One Told Us, the podcast that tells the truth about parenting and talks about all the stuff you wish you knew before having kids. I'm your host, Rachael Shepard-Ohta, and today I'm so excited to speak with Amanda E. White, a licensed therapist and author of a top parenting Substack, Fence Sitter. She's also the co-host of the Nuance Needed podcast and the founder of group therapy practice, Therapy for Women Center, based in Philadelphia, but serving clients across the country. Amanda has been featured in notable publications like Forbes, Washington Post, Shape, Women's Health Magazine, and more. And today, I'm so excited to speak to you about really all things mental health, but we're going to have a special focus on this idea of fence sitting. So I'm excited to get into it. Thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to chat with you, Rachael.
So for those moms or dads or caregivers listening who might not know you, can you share a little bit about yourself and your background and then what inspired you to start Fence Sitter?
Yeah, absolutely. You got into kind of the main points, but yeah, I'm a licensed therapist by trade. I have a 2-year-old now, and I was someone who really sat on the fence, unsure if I wanted children for many, many years. And I started the Substack really out of sort of like a love letter to my previous self of what I wish I would have known, because I had such extreme fear about losing myself in parenting or what it would be like. And I felt like no one was talking about what it was like on the other side. I felt like every parent I talked to either was like, I always knew I wanted to have children, or they never wanted to have children, or even if I knew them personally and they had talked to me about not being sure, once they had their child, it was like their memory was wiped and they didn't recognize that previous version of themselves, which now as a parent, I completely understand why that happens. But when I was on the other side, I was so confused by that. And this was kind of a project of I want to like honor and remember that previous version of me as well.
And do you find that that's a common, I would imagine it's a common theme that comes up for moms in therapy work, because you're speaking to the pre-baby version of you, but I even hear it from moms who are like, how do I get back to myself? I don't know myself anymore. Or just making peace with, I guess, that idea of like, maybe we aren't going to go back to the way we were before. And like, how do we kind of come to terms with that and make that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is like the hard lesson of life, whether you're a parent or not, is we can never get back to previous versions of ourselves.
Right.
Like it or not, life happens and does change us for, good and bad sometimes. And I think that is a fact of life we all have to reckon with.
So what would be something that you would tell that version of you that wasn't sure they wanted kids? What would you say to her about what it's like on the other side?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing I would say is I had a lot of fears about if I ever did this, it would mean that I lost myself or I had changed. Like if you ever saw me, I don't know, like not going on adventurous vacations anymore, that is a sign that I have lost myself. Or if I didn't go on a date with my husband for multiple months, like I lost the plot. And what I really come back to a lot is that temporarily changing doesn't mean you're lost. Or even changing in general doesn't mean you're lost, because we all are changing. And I think there's a lot of fear sometimes that, especially people who are sitting on the fence deciding whether to have children and they're in their like late 20s, early 30s, they're watching people around them have kids. There is this fear of wanting to hold on to life as it is. And I experienced that very intensely. I was very frustrated when I had friends who immediately had kids after getting married, where I wanted to be married for a while, and I wanted us all to stay married, but
Right.
not go into having children yet.
Like, this wasn't the plan, guys.
Yes. And instead, what I would tell myself, and I do tell clients this who are struggling, is that life is going to change regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whether you have children or don't, you're not going to be able to live in that, time of your life where you're in your late 20s, your early 30s, and you have tons of time with your friends. Like, even if you don't have children, your life will change when the people in your life have children.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. I guess I'm curious too, like, I mean, there are obviously those feelings of like, I don't want my life to change. It's so fun to be like young and carefree right now. But a lot of people do kind of get past that and they're like, all right, well, it's time to kind of, settle down now. I know I want this eventually. May as well do it now.
Yep.
But are there other reasons that moms tell you that they're really unsure about having kids? Like, is it the political climate? Is it the cost of living? Is it all of the above? What are kind of the big ones?
Definitely the two you hit on are huge ones. I hear climate change a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's interesting too is there are a lot of like ethical conversations and questions that come up for people of like, is it right to bring a child into the world given the uncertainty and unrest? And obviously I nor anyone else can say.
Right.
And it's such a personal, like unique decision. And some people really feel like, no, I can't in good faith do that. And some people feel like, no, I have to do this. Like, this is my way of like, imagining hope in the world and taking action on it. Finances are a huge one. And just feeling like, there's very little support, which you talk about a lot in this country for women especially, but families. And, the world is kind of a hostile towards families place. And I think those are really big challenges I think we just are thinking about it a lot more than previous generations did, which is a great thing, but it's also creating this period of real like fear and I think instability. And I think there's pros and cons to all of it. I think it's wonderful we're exploring this. And my belief is sort of like maybe there is a lot of wisdom in the ambivalence.
Yeah.
But I also think that there is so much content on social media, which you talk about a lot, which terrifies people and can be really detrimental.
Yeah, that was going to kind of be my next thought is like, I wonder how much social media has contributed to this too. Like you said, I think overall, I think this overall, the increase in parents being really honest and really like raw about what parenthood is actually like and how hard and difficult it can be. I think it's a net positive because it does allow people to see like they're not alone. They're not the only ones struggling. But again, I think you're right that it does also scare a lot of people because if you've never had kids and that's the type of content you're seeing, but you're not at the same time experiencing the joy and fulfillment that can come from parenthood, it seems like, oh my God, why would anybody ever do that? That looks horrible.
Absolutely. And that's kind of why I created my work, because I agree. I think overall it is a net benefit. But I was like, if I can sort of bridge the gap and hold people's hand and explain to them why someone would do this, even when it looks insane on the surface, my hope is that I can support people who truly want to have children be able to do that and still see the real, truth of what it's going to look like. Or on the other hand, see that stuff and decide that it isn't what they want. Because I remember when I was, scrolling on, I swear, it's like you decide you're interested in having a child and your algorithm just...
They know. I know. They're listening to your thoughts.
Yeah, magically changes. And I just remember seeing tons of videos about, just like women cry. Like, I think especially the TikTok of it all, of women like
TikTok is worse.
Crying in postpartum depression. And I now as a parent, like, I get it. Like, I could easily, like, my child is 2 right now. I had a really rough weekend with her. I was so happy when she went to daycare today.
Yep.
And if I'd heard myself say that, I would have been like, well, why did you have a child then? It doesn't seem like it was worth it.
Right.
But when you do it, you can hold both of those truths. And I just think we need to remember that someone can feel that way in one moment or one time, and that doesn't mean that that's all that there is. But the problem with social media is we make one video of our thoughts, and then someone sees it and they imagine that that's how we feel all the time.
Yes.
When it's just a moment in time that you may feel that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I see this kind of like growing tension, especially on TikTok, between like child-free by choice folks and parents, where it's like they're arguing with each other. And it seems so strange to me because it's like, you guys want different things. You're in a totally different life path. Like, why are you arguing with each other and trying to convince each other that your way is correct? And there's, like you said, there's no nuance. People just assume they know everything about you from one video or that you know the whole story. And I love that your podcast is called Nuance Needed because it's like, that's exactly what we need is more nuance. So tell us a little bit about Nuance Needed. What are the kind of like gaps in the parenting and mental health conversations that you're hoping to fill?
So Nuance Needed covers all mental health topics, but what's really interesting is actually my co-host is single and doesn't have children.
Oh, cool.
I'm married and have a child. So I think we do a really good job of challenging each other and bridging that gap. But a lot of what we get inspired by is we see completely wrong information online about, you know, health, wellness. We did an episode on how to decide if you want to have children. My co-host did an episode where we really talked about her experience being single and what she wishes, people who were married or partnered knew. What else did we did a whole episode on burnout and how people completely misunderstand the term burnout. And we try to just be like, if you're seeing stuff online that you feel like is not correct, come to the podcast.
Yes.
And we will break it down. And we also try to model, like, we don't always know where we're going to land on things. So sometimes we don't even know what we think until we've talked about it. And we try to normalize that it is okay to explore nuance without having a perfect idea of what you think.
I love that. That's so refreshing. And I love that you have a co-host that's single because I think so many, especially first-time parents, when you're kind of like maybe the first one of your friend group or something to have a baby, I hear a lot from moms in particular who really struggle with those friendships and with understanding each other once you have that big life change. So I think that's really, really cool. We're going to take a quick break actually, because speaking of parents and first-time parents, most of my listeners are already parents. They're not fence sitting anymore. They've decided, they've plunged into parenthood, and now they have a little one or maybe multiple. But something that I also want to touch on with you is this idea of fence sitting with having more children or deciding to maybe be one and done. So we're going to talk about that next. We'll be right back. You know that feeling when it's Monday morning and you're out of literally everything and you have to pack the kids' lunches and give them breakfast and give them a million snacks and you have nothing to pull from in your fridge or pantry? Same. When we can't make it to the grocery store because we've had a really busy weekend, we are so happy that we have all of our Thrive staples in the pantry, from our snacks to our pantry items to things to make the kids for breakfast and sandwiches for school. They've got literally everything we could possibly need. And not only is it convenient because it's delivered, but we can also get our favorites on a subscription. So we don't even ever have to think about it. We can choose how often we want our favorite things delivered and when. So it just makes it ridiculously easy. And we never forget to have our favorite things for our kids on hand. I love Thrive's Healthy Swaps scanner. So you can actually scan a product and it instantly recommends healthier swaps. So I've swapped out some of our more sugary processed type snacks for more filling and high quality things, but are still at a great price on Thrive. So things like Chomps beef sticks, Simple Mills crackers, those are my kids' favorite things for their lunch boxes. And then I also really love the high protein things that they have and things for my pantry to make quick dinners, like the Primal Kitchen sauces. I absolutely love the teriyaki one for grilled chicken. It's so, so good with rice. If you're ready to make the switch too, go to thrivemarket.com/HeySleepyBaby for 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. Oh my gosh, $60. That's Thrive Market, THRIVE market.com/HeySleepyBaby. thrivemarket.com/HeySleepyBaby for 30% off your first order plus a free $60 gift. That's insane. It is spring, and that means we want to be outside. We have kids' practices. We want to be on the go, going to the beach, taking walks after dinner. We don't have time to be in the kitchen cooking and prepping a million different meals every night. My husband keeps bugging me about when we're getting our next Factor box, and I don't blame him because they are so, so delicious. I honestly don't really know how they do it, but every single meal tastes like you're eating something from a restaurant. I have no idea how they do it, but it is so delicious and really filling and healthy too. You can also personalize your boxes so that you are meeting your nutrition goals and getting exactly what you want or need, like extra protein or fiber. A couple of our favorite meals recently have been the truffle mushroom macaroni and grilled filet mignon, which is so good. I also love the roasted garlic butter salmon. And I also really, really am into the loaded mashed potatoes and shredded chicken. It's just so delicious. And again, things that I would never think to make, never take the time to make, but are absolutely delish. So you can get started at factormeals.com/no-one-told-us-50 off and use code no-one-told-us-50 off to get 50% off your order plus free shipping for your first box. That's again, code no-one-told-us-50 off at factormeals.com/no-one-told-us-50 off for 50% off plus free shipping. Factor powers your day with satisfying breakfasts, on-the-go lunches, premium dinners, and guilt-free snacks and desserts. So it's much easier to savor more this spring. Factor meals pack in the flavor with none of the fuss. So get yours today. So Amanda, assuming that listeners are already on that parenthood path, they're no longer fence sitting between, do I have kids? Do I not have kids? I think where a lot of parents land after having their first baby is, do we have more? Yeah. Or are we good with just one? This is something that I know is becoming way more common in our society these days. Only children are much more kind of socially accepted, I guess, or it's just, it's becoming more normalized. And for a lot of the reasons that we discussed earlier, right? It's like finances, the political climate, climate change, like all of these reasons that parents are kind of like, we really want a child, but one is good for us.
Yep.
I guess I'm curious on your thoughts on being one and done. What are the kind of messages that we get about family size and identity as mothers? What are you seeing in your therapy practice from people who are grappling with this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if they're leaning towards one, I think there's a lot of fear that there will be something wrong with their child, that the child won't thrive. A lot of people feel pressure, I think, just based on, for a really long time, only children were a complete anomaly. So there hasn't been a lot of research until lately because they couldn't really research it because they were so rare. But yeah, I think it's a lot of fear. I think it's fear of judgment. I mean, I think if you think about how quickly parents are asked when you're having another one, that's a big thing that comes up. I also think, birth trauma or a difficult pregnancy is a really big thing. And we're talking about that more, thankfully. But, to go through it again can be a really big hurdle for people as well. So, yeah, I think it's deciding whether, I always kind of say that deciding whether to have a child or have another is sort of this like delicate balance of how much you like your current setup and the potential of it getting way harder. But also, I think once you have a child, you do have more referential experience to understand the joy and the love that comes as well. So you're kind of balancing, is it worth it without living it? I mean, that's what's so fascinating to me about having children is you cannot understand how you're going to feel until you make like an irreversible decision.
Right.
And you have to sort of just like weigh your thoughts and concerns. And one thing that I'm a big believer in is I think people should have another child because they want to, not out of fear that their, child won't be okay or what will happen to them, because there are no guarantees about anything happening.
No, exactly. And I see these arguments all the time where it's like, I want my child to have siblings that they can grow up and be super close with. But there are plenty of people who aren't close with their siblings at all or have really contentious relationships with them, right? So like you said, there's no guarantees. And to have a child just for that sole reason is maybe not the best idea, right?
It puts a lot of pressure, I think, on them. And I think that if we're looking at child dynamics, I mean, one of the biggest predictors of siblings not having a great relationship is pressure that parents put on their kids, not necessarily to be friends. Sometimes it is. And it's like, you know, you need to be nice to your brother. You need to have a good relationship. This bond will last you forever. Like that pressure can be difficult, or comparing their kids. And I think if you are having a child for that reasons, you are just more likely to fall into some of those patterns versus having an individual sort of relationship with each child.
And I hear a lot, I mean, I'm obviously hearing from parents who are struggling with sleep or who have struggled with sleep in the past. And so many of them are like, I don't think I can do this again. Like my first was such a hard sleeper. I was struggling so much. Like, how do I do this again? Yeah. And then at the same time, I hear from parents who went for it. They're on the other side and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm having such a better experience with my second, because now I know like this really does end and everything is a phase, and like I can loosen up a little bit because I'm not a first time mom doing it all for the very first time figuring it out. So it is interesting to like hear from people on kind of both sides of that decision.
Yeah. And even though, so I'm only going to have one child, and even though I feel that way, I mean, I've questioned it. I've thought about it a lot. And I've had moments of being like, I get that. I can really see how like the newborn phase really scares me way less now that I've been through it. Now that I have a toddler, like I really could see it working and being better. And I think exactly what you said, there's something so intangible that's so helpful about just going through it once, even if your kid is different. You just have that faith.
Exactly.
The phases will end. Like now, I'm in the twos, and it is so hard, and I feel like it's never going to end. But I know if I had another, it would be probably easier. So that's why I think desire really, really, really matters in this conversation. You know, whether you're having more children, how many, whether you're deciding to have more kids, desire matters. And I think a lot of times people get really caught up in pros and cons, and that makes sense. And those are important factors in consideration. But whenever I'm helping people decide, you know, whether to have children and how many, I really think it's important that we separate desire from barriers and logistics, from fears, and then also from societal expectations. Because we a lot of times, you know, just mix those all up together. And then we can't even say if we truly want another child or not.
Right. I also see so many people really kind of struggling with that decision though. So like, how do you know if you're done or if you want one? I think so many people struggle with like, oh, I want another one so badly, but like I can't pull the trigger. I can't decide. So like, do I really want it? Or am I just looking at other people with bigger families and have like some envy? Like, I guess, how do you really get in touch with that desire? And if you actually have the desire to have another one or not?
Yeah. And I think there's like no perfect answer either, because desire can fluctuate. And I think that's one thing that's hard. That's why people can be a yes, be a no, be a maybe, and kind of move around, especially depending on how your current life feels.
Right.
I think one exercise I give people is to try to back up from all of that and think about your values and think about what's really important to you and where you want to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. When you think of family, is it more than one child, or do you feel like you are, you know, your family is complete or good with where you are? I think thinking about, you know, how your life may change if you have more than one child, and if the positives and benefits sort of outweigh what you're currently dealing with. Yeah. But yeah, I think desire is hard to quantify, but it's really important to get in touch with. And you don't need to have a good enough reason to have another child or not. Your life doesn't need to make sense enough either. Like, I think sometimes we shame, you know, parents for being like, your life is already so crazy. Why would you have another child? But like, people have different desires, and this is also a phase that you go through. And I think a lot of people want more than one child because it's important to them, and they want to be able to look back on their life and have created this family.
Right. That makes so much sense. And you mentioned the idea of like, do you feel like your family is complete with one child? And I think whether you have 1 or 3, that is something that is hard. Like, how do you know? Do you ever feel totally complete or totally done? Is this something that people struggle with when they come to you? Because I get this question a lot since I had 3. It's like, are you guys done? Do you feel like you're done? Did you feel like you were done with 2? It's like this, maybe it's a myth that like you're just going to all of a sudden feel, okay, we're complete.
I think it's a myth. You can correct me if I'm wrong because you have 3 kids, so maybe you can answer better than me. Life isn't that simple. I think we could all take multiple paths and they could be good lives. I think there's absolutely a world where I could have more than one child. I think if I had another child, I wouldn't regret that child. Right. And who knows, you could talk to me in 2 years and maybe I will have another child. I don't know. Yeah. So I try to also leave like openings where it's okay to change your mind. Yeah. I think that's where you just have to come back to what is important to you. What are your values? And like for me personally, I really value the independence that I get from having one child. It's one of my favorite things. And while I know I would love another child and it would probably be great, I just don't want to step down that road. And I'm good with the current life path that I'm on. And I love Cheryl Strayed's, she has this great poem that people may know called The Ghost Ships That Didn't Carry Us. And she talks about how we all have these like unlived lives and we're all going to have some sort of grief, I think, about different paths we could have taken, even beyond kids, like whether you are with a different partner, whether you move somewhere, whether you take a different job. And it's okay to, you know, feel some sort of way, feel sadness, grief, whatever it is for those unlived lives. And that doesn't mean that you're making the wrong choice. Like I think we get very concerned that there's a right way. There is, right? Rachael was born to have 3 children, and that is what is meant for her. When I think we need to open ourselves up to the possibility that we could be happy with multiple paths, and then you just get to choose which one you want right now.
Yeah, I think so. We have 3 kids, obviously. Yeah. Pretty much everybody that's close to us, like our best friends and my in-laws and our cousin, like all of the people that are core to us have only children and plan on only having only children. It's so funny and interesting to see like they're taking international trips constantly and like one of them can leave for work for 2 weeks and it's no big deal. And they're going on dates all the time and like finding childcare is not that big of a deal because there's only one of them. And so you see these, I guess you call them pros and cons, and like maybe they look at us and say, oh, it's so sweet that their kids have siblings to play with with each other. And like you said, there's no one right or wrong, but I do see that independence with one is pretty sweet. Although when I only had one, I still felt like I was drowning. Like I still felt like it was so hard. I don't know if I ever got to that like easier independent stage when I only had one. I don't know.
Wait until you're like probably 4 or 5.
Yeah, maybe.
That's where I'm banking. I'm like, I'm going to make my money when she's potty trained.
There you go. And in school, oh my gosh, it'll be the dream. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to come right back and talk about partners and disagreements on this. We'll be right back.
Summer's here, and Nordstrom has everything you need for your best dress season ever. From beach days and weddings to weekend getaways and your everyday wardrobe. Discover stylish options under $100 from tons of your favorite brands like Mango, Skims, Princess Polly, and Madewell. It's easy, too, with free shipping and free returns, in-store order pickup, and more. Shop today in stores, online at Nordstrom.com, or download the Nordstrom app.
This episode is brought to you by Chevy Silverado. When it's time for you to ditch the blacktop and head off-road, do it in a truck that says no to nothing. The Chevy Silverado Trail Boss. Get the rugged capability of its Z71 suspension and 2-inch factory lift. Plus, impressive torque and towing capacity thanks to an available Duramax 3-liter turbo diesel engine. Where other trucks call it quits, you'll just be getting started. Visit Chevy.com to learn more.
Amanda, I think this is such a helpful conversation for people to listen to and to kind of, like you said, think about their desires and weigh all of these decisions and kind of get okay with there not ever being one perfect answer or one perfect path. I think that's such a helpful way to think about it. What else comes up, though, from what I hear from followers, from friends, is that a lot of times you're actually really sure. You really know that you want another baby, or you really know that you don't want another baby. But your partner has the opposite feeling. How do you navigate this? Like, is there ever a way to compromise on a baby where where like maybe it's not 100% wanted? Like that seems terrible, but it's also maybe unfair for one partner to give up that deep desire or that dream of what their family should look like. How do couples get through this?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a little bit of a shift, which is interesting but should be, right? Of like women getting to decide more as they should.
That sounds good.
Right? Because they're going to be the ones that are going to carry the child.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Do other things. So that's like the ideal scenario, I would hope, where the woman gets to, be the one that decides. But I also think there are some ways that you can compromise. Obviously, you can't compromise whether you have a child or not, but I've heard of situations and, I've worked with people who it looks like when one isn't as positive about having another child as someone else, like what other structures of support can we put in place? Can we hire a nanny? Can we move closer to family? Can we, send our child to a different school? Can we do other things to kind of get more support and offset it? And I think that it's hard again with, I think, women who are the default parent and often are the ones that are taking on so much more emotional labor. So I think if the woman isn't as 100% sure about having another child, I think that she should get priority in that case.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that there are things that you can think about. I think also, going back to what we were saying of there's one right answer, I think there's also a myth that we will be 100% sure about things. And my recommendation is for people to always try to like get over 55%.
Okay.
Sure. Like it's like thinking of it as like a board meeting.
Right.
And like both people need to at least be over that 50% threshold. I think if you're not, it is going to be really hard to add another child when someone much more wants to not have another child than have one.
And so do you think that that's actually a harder dynamic to get through when there's one person that really wants one and the other one is not so sure? Do you feel like that's easier to overcome, or is it easier to overcome when, say, like mom is like, I can't do this again, I never want to do this again, and the other person says, but I really want another one, or vice versa?
I would say that's easier if you're in a healthy relationship with someone who respects you. I hear and have heard of, like relationships where, the man, because we're talking in this way of, heterosexual relationships is the one that's like, this is what a family means. This is what I need to have happen. And they're also not aware of all of the intense labor, emotional labor, mental labor, in addition to physical stuff that happens. And I think that is potentially a sign to really think about your relationship, and that would probably, I would recommend going to couples therapy before taking the dive into just adding another child, because I always say, whatever's going on in your relationship is going to be magnified through having a child or adding another child to the mix. It's not going to fix anything. Like, you'll probably have moments of loving your partner more, but it will also be the things you already fight about will be more intense as well.
Especially when it's a second or third. I have to, just from my personal experience, like my husband and I got so close after our first. We had such it was so bonding for our relationship in most ways. Of course, we bickered and stuff when we were tired, but overall it was really positive for us. And then after our second was born, it was like the first time that our relationship had ever been really rocked, and we were in a bad place for a really long time. The idea that another baby is going to fix problems in your relationship is unfortunately really misguided. It's often the opposite. The other thing that I would just throw out there for anybody who's thinking about this is I know that we have our, biological clocks and things like that, and things are not always this simple, but maybe consider a bigger gap than what you had previously planned. I know a lot of times people think they want to have 2 under 2, or they want to get their babies, out in rapid succession and have them all super close in age. But we've actually found that a little bit of a bigger gap, like 3 years, is so nice, and kind of gives you that time to recover emotionally, recover your relationship, get it back on track, feel better in your body, without, all of those huge hormonal swings, and then maybe think about it again.
I totally agree with that. And I think that is where anytime we're like putting intense pressure on ourselves, I think we're more likely to not act sort of in our values. And yeah, if you're not sure whether you want another child, I think take some time to think about it. I mean, even like I think that, if you're not sure about your fertility and things like that, there are options you can take. Sometimes just exploring those options, talking to someone about what your options are, what they look like, can be really helpful in just like giving you data about it as well. But I agree, the pressure of the 2-year gap can be really intense. And then if you do it, like we were saying, there still isn't, it's not 100% sure that your kids will be best friends, even if you do that.
Exactly. Or that anything will be easier. I think people do it because they think it's easier to just get all the baby stuff over with. But I mostly see overwhelm when I see parents with kids in really, really close age gaps. I'm also glad that you touched on fertility, because this was going to be kind of like my last question on this topic, which is, for so many people listening, I'm sure that they would love another child.
Yeah.
But things are just not happening in the same way. There's either secondary infertility or there's been losses. What do you see in your practice? Like, how are people managing that disappointment, that grief about their family just not looking the way that they dreamed it would look?
Absolutely. I think the first thing that's important for people to know is there is like a real biological drive when you've had losses to have another child. Like, they've done tons of studies on that, and that is a very real feeling. And I think it makes the loss even harder, because you have that biological drive in addition to probably you wanted another child. So you have that emotional connection as well too. And I hope that me sharing that just gives people a little like softness for themselves, compassion for themselves, that this is really, really difficult stuff. I think it's mourning. I think obviously everyone gets to decide. And, I think that's where couples can struggle too, of maybe one wants to keep trying and one is like, I want to move on. I want to, our family feels complete. And I think it's recognizing, infertility, secondary infertility is still like a loss, even if you haven't experienced miscarriage. And I think it's really giving both people the space to grieve in whatever way that works, and recognizing that grief is so unique and individual, and people may grieve differently, and it doesn't mean that they're wrong because they're grieving differently than you. And one person's response to grief might be to say, I don't want to do this again. And one person's response to grief might be, it's really important for me to keep trying. Yeah. And I think that's where trying to compromise in the middle, but also grieving that is important. And therapy, couples therapy, grief work is really hard because there is no structure to it. There's no time frame to it. It's so unique.
Yeah, it's messy. And like you said, not everybody does it in the same way. I mean, no two people are going to grieve the exact same way. So giving each other some understanding and some grace, I think, in that situation is really key.
Yeah. And I think also, recognizing how that, like you had said, if you had this idea of what you wanted your family to be and it's not that way, there's going to be grief in that, and exploring the options and seeing, right, is, surrogacy or adoption or other things something that would actually make you feel better, or are you kind of doing it as a response to, I just need to have another child immediately, and trying to give yourself space to explore what it might look like. And even especially if you have one child, like looking into some of the research about only children, looking and seeing what, if it wouldn't be so bad. Maybe there are some benefits you could enjoy of having one child too.
Yeah, for sure. That was kind of a similar situation that happened to a friend of mine. They had a lot of, infertility issues, and finally they had a beautiful baby, but they did have to kind of come to terms with the fact that they would only be having one, even though they would have loved another. Yeah. And so now they're like traveling the world with her, and they're making the best of it. And she's got lots of other connections with friends and cousins and things like that. So that's really great advice. And I think also just meeting and seeing other families that are one and done. Yeah. Do you have any favorite resources or people that you like to follow for that?
Yeah, one of my absolute favorite books is a book called One and Only, and it's written by a woman who was an only child, and then she had an only child.
Oh, cool.
And it is a phenomenal book. There's a Facebook group online, interestingly, that is called it's called, we can link it in the show notes. It's called like only like one and done, no drama.
Okay.
Because some of the Facebook groups are a lot of people talking about how hard it is to have one child. So I'm actually in that Facebook group because it's kind of this group that's really positive about only children. And
Love
like
that.
they pep each other up about the great things about having only one child. That might be a resource. And just there's some accounts online, Only Not Lonely. She shares her life. And yeah, I think just thinking of other creative ways. And like we said, like everything is going to have, you know, good things and hard things about any sized family.
Absolutely.
So embracing what you have and trying to make the most of what is your reality right now.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect spot to end it. That's really, really helpful. Thank you for those resources. My last question before I let you go is more of a personal one. And it's, what is something that no one told you about before becoming a mom that you wish you had known?
I did not understand the depth of daycare sickness.
Oh my God.
It is
so gross.
Truly something I have never experienced, nor could I ever imagine. I mean, this year, my daughter switched daycares and she got strep, the flu, an ear infection, and hand, foot, and mouth in a row.
No, hand, foot, mouth is like my worst fear of reliving that again.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I was just like, this, like if someone would have told me that, I would have been like, you're lying. You're
no,
lying. There's
it's
no
a miracle these places
way.
stay open. It's honestly insane. It's insane.
And somehow our parents are like, my parents are like, I don't remember this. You were in daycare. So I've tried to do research being like, is this a new thing that's happening? And the internet.
They probably just all sent us and we all were just sick there the entire time. And like maybe we had better immune systems for it. Who knows? But yeah, it is definitely a thing. And this year was worse than ever. My kids like barely went to school in January, I think. It was insane.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a good one. I don't think anybody's ever said that one before. But it's so true.
Yeah. And I can't imagine with multiple, like them all getting sick.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, and my husband and I too, we've gotten sicker this year than ever before because they're just constantly bringing home the plague.
Yep.
Oh God. Well, at least it's almost summertime. Hopefully things will start to get better soon. Yes. Amanda, this has been such a helpful conversation. I know that so many people will feel so seen and so relieved through listening to you. So I really appreciate you taking the time today. Where can people connect with you and find all of your amazing resources?
Yes, you can find me on Substack at Fence Sitter. That's my Substack handle. Or you can find me on social media, on Instagram, or I'm not really on TikTok that much anymore, but at Therapy for Women. And yeah, if you're interested in therapy, you can visit therapyforwomencenter.com.
Amazing. And I did see that you're writing a book, right? Or you wrote a book.
I've written 2 books.
You've written 2 books. That's what I thought.
Yeah,
okay.
They're about drinking because I'm also sober and I specialize in that in my clinical work as well. So if anyone's curious about that, yeah, my book is called Not Drinking Tonight.
Yes, that's right. I love it. And I was debating like, oh, what do I want to have her on for? I'll have to have you on again because I also wanted to talk about that because I haven't drank in close to a year. And
amazing.
Yeah, I feel like it's something that a lot of people are curious about. So definitely check out Amanda for that as well if you're like sober curious. And we'll have to do a follow-up episode about it.
Love to.
Thank you so much for joining. Have a great rest of your day.
Want to keep your personal number private but still stay connected? With Line 2, you can get a second phone line right on your device with a super simple app and no need for another phone. Whether it's for online shopping, dating, or shielding your main number from spam, Line 2 is an easy way to manage it all. Ready for peace of mind without breaking the bank? Call, text, block, and more for only $9.99. Get started with line2.com/audio or download Line 2 in any app store today. Line 2, your second line simplified.